I'm delighted to say Matt Williams is with us. Matt, good morning to you.
Morning, Jim. Morning, Alan.
We had a slightly off-piste conversation a little bit earlier on about French cuisine. I think it's vastly overrated. You're a man who's cultivated a life in France. Is the French food as good as everybody bangs on about?
Oh, mate, not even anywhere close to how good it really is. It's absolutely brilliant. I actually love cuisine de campagne, which is the food of the country. You know, so you got all the tiny little cuisine nouveau, which everyone raves about. It is nice, but when you get and eat the beautiful food that the country people of the south of France or anywhere in the north of Midlands, it's something very, very special. No, it's Ger. Come over here. I'll show you around.
You're talking meats and cheeses and pâtés and that kind of stuff, is it?
It's a country with 250 unique cheeses. So, as de Gaulle said, how do you govern a country that has 250 cheeses? But it is an incredible place because the food and the wine are just interlinked with the people. And, you know, you're getting 20 and 19-year-olds talking with great passion about wine and food. You know, that doesn't happen in other places. It's just so linked to part of their life. And then look, you forget also it's an agricultural country where I am in the south, right across the Pyrenees to Rugby heartland. It's an agricultural country.
Yeah, okay, you're sucking me back in there. We didn't talk about the wine, in fairness. We kind of left that bit out. We were just trying to find a way to provoke a French response.
That's the starting point, mate.
It should have been.
Start at the wine and work your way back.
I guess our conversation came off the back of this French team, so good, and yet it's been such a long time since they were title winners. And what is that? What is the flakiness within them over the last period of time that has prevented them from reaching the best team in Europe, which they really should be vying for year in, year out?
I think, Joe, you've got to put a line in the sand and you say before Galthié and after Galthié, and with the national team. And then before that, you've got to say their president, Bernard Laporte, who is a hugely controversial figure, before him and after him. So when Laporte came in, they won the rights to the World Cup or to host the World Cup in 2023. They then did everything right because not only did they win the rights to the World Cup, they actually then said, who are the guys that are going to be playing in that World Cup? How old are they now? And they are between 16 and probably 20, but let's say 16, 18, 19 years old. And they really put a lot of resources into talent identification, coaching, education, and conditioning into those age groups. And they brought them through, and they won under-20s tournaments, I think 2 years in a row, and they'll run up in another one. Then we had COVID, obviously. So they've produced 3 or 4 years of really high-quality young players. 4 years ago, let's say, those guys, those guys are now maturing and coming and in this national side. And obviously Dupont and Etamak are the greatest examples of that. Probably Aldred as well is part of that. But it's right across the team in the front rowers and the second rowers. They're all coming through. Saw Wacky play there in the second row against Italy the other day. Another example of that. Then they did, that's the players and that's Laporte. And then Laporte also got the clubs on side. So before Laporte, you know, we look at Johnny Sexton. Johnny's played a very few amount of minutes this year and playing for Ireland because everything in Ireland is geared towards the national team. And that's correct. That's I'm not in any way criticising. That's the way it must be. And it is in New Zealand and it is to a lesser degree in Australia, South Africa and so on. But in France, the clubs ruled it. The clubs ran the show, and the national team was very much running to the beat of a different drum. And that's really why the last 10 years they haven't played well because they don't care. They weren't fit enough for international rugby because they were constantly playing club rugby. They played club rugby the week before. They played club rugby on the weekend off. And the national team was just left out there somewhere. Galthié has then come in, he's changed all that. The players are rested, they're conditioned, conditioned correctly, and they've got this really talented generation, and he's putting them together. They have played magnificent rugby, but they're a young team up until this year, and they've lost games. The victory over New Zealand was a watershed moment for that team. That's the time that this team really started to believe in itself. Now, it's rugby, and we can't predict that they'll go through and win a Grand Slam. I don't even know if they're going to win on Saturday. But this is a very good team that is capable of winning a championship, and it's either this year or soon. And I think this Saturday will tell us if it's this year or soon.
In a weird way, the problem with the clubs, right, is it had seemed intractable from the outside, but the way you describe going after those 16 to 19-year-olds and ploughing the resources into the talent identification, cleaving them in many ways to the national side at that level meant that those players, maybe in some cases their first love or their first priority was also international. At that point, it's like, we're going to make you successful at this point. We're going to invest in you because we believe you are the future for the World Cup. It wasn't that the club got all the credit for developing them. It was more symbiotic. The relationship was more deep and more entrenched earlier in those players' careers in a way that maybe it hadn't been in the past.
I think that's a really astute observation, Ger, because it was also their focus on winning the World Under-20 Championship. So at a very young age, they were taught to win for France. And I believe some of that to a much lesser degree at the under-18 level, where they still play some form of or international or cross-border rugby. So even from very young ages, this generation realised that winning in the French jersey was a super high priority in their life. And then when they go to club, they were also educated on the conditioning. Like the top 14 is the most ridiculous rugby championship in the world. It's got huge amounts of money, but your first game is in late August. And if you win it, like Toulouse did last year, your last game is in the first week of June. So you've got an 11-month of the year playing program, excuse me, in this really heavily contact. I mean, French rugby is so physical, and it burns people out. You can't train at the intensity you need to train at for conditioning for international level. So if you're just playing club rugby in France every week, you're just at this level where you've got to survive. You can't train hard. You've got to just recover and get ready for the next game. What Galthié has done is take them out of that system for periods of time. And the clubs hate it, but it's the right thing to do. Rest them and condition them. And this is sort of changed, and the players understand this now. Now, they get a little bit torn, but the deal with the French Federation is also saying to the clubs, you have to reduce your amount of foreign players or you'll get fined. They have to be what they call GIF, J-I-F, which basically means you are junior that came through the Federation of France. In other words, you came through the academies. And they're saying each year, they put a higher level of the number of locally produced players that you have to have on the field, and reducing the overseas players, which again is a very, very good thing for France. So, you saw clubs like Toulon that are now last in the top 14, didn't put anywhere near enough effort into their academies, and they're coming last in the top 14. Clubs like Toulouse put a huge amount of effort into their academies, are at the top of the game. So these players and the clubs are being educated in a much better way by the French Federation. You then put in the Galthié puts around his national side a crop of excellent coaches. That was not the French way. The French way was one or two coaches and we'll just run it. He has specialists, and they are really good, top quality coaches, and including foreigners like Sean Edwards. The players come out of a French camp and go, wow, that was good. In the old days, before Galthié, they'd come out of a French camp and go, well, they were a bunch of muppets. That wasn't really well run. So they didn't have belief in the system. This group believe in the system. They believe in Galthié. They believe in the coaches, the specialist coaches they have. And the other part is they believe in each other. And that's, the other, whether they win or not this championship, to me, it's irrelevant. It's the fact that we have them back as a real player on the international stage, because they play such gorgeous rugby and they come up the mountain a different way than the English-speaking world comes up the mountain. They play a different way, they think a different way, and they go about it a different way. And when they do it with great excellence, like Galthié is doing, it is wonderful. And we talked about the French wine. It's the same thing, mate. It's just different. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It's different. French food is different, but it's beautiful. And it's uplifting for us all if we can share in it. And the rugby is exactly the same.
What's interesting then is that this is a relatively recent development, Matt. So a lot of the players that are expected to maybe win this year's championship would have come through in spite of maybe some dysfunction in the French rugby environment. So this thing is only going to get better and better from a French rugby perspective, I presume.
This group's got 2 World Cups, and Owen, you're dead right. They obviously have targeted 2023 for hosting their World Cup and to win it, and they want to emulate what the footballers did in '99. There's zero doubt that I think that's even up on a wall somewhere in their training centre up in Marcoussis in Paris. But like Dupont is going to be around, and Entermac and Aldred and almost all that team are going to be around to the next World Cup, including Galthié, who was one of the oldest. Gale's 27 now. He could very easily play at the following World Cup in 2027 when he's 32. So this is a really amazing group. And yesterday, Galthié brought in 15 more players. So there's 42 people players in camp at the moment. And you look through the quality of the squad, and you look through the depth charts that he's producing. In other words, how many players have you got in each position? So let's take hookers for example. He's got 3 real high quality hookers, and Camille Shad, the Racing 92 hooker, who has got a physique like something carved out of marble. Like you just can't believe the neck and traps this man has. And he's a quality player. He's been injured. He's out of that. So, but they've still got 3 replacements, and that's again another thing that Galthié is doing. He's cultivating depth within this group. They're going to be a force going forward for the next 2 World Cup cycles. And let's remember, they have not dismantled the production line that they set up at the 16s and 18s level for their 20s. So this Friday night, Ireland under-20s will play France under-20s in Marseille. And I only saw highlights, and it was against Italy, but the Italian under-20 side has been playing exceptionally well over the last few years. And I mean exceptionally well. They've come within whiskers of beating France, England. They've beaten Wales and things like this. They're not. It's not like the Open side where there's 50 points between them. The Italian side has been good, and the French under-20s really put in a big shift and won by 40-odd points. So we'll know a little bit more about this group after they play Ireland on Friday night, because Ireland under-20s had a wonderful win against Wales. So it is a long-term production, and it's bringing France back to where they believe they should be, and they rightfully they should be. And both Bernard Laporte and Galthié, and the political battles that had to be won, deserve a lot of credit, because they had to win the politics before they could win the rugby, and they're winning both.
It's concerning for the rest of us that this is happening. From an Ireland perspective then, Matt, if you were part of the French coaching ticket, if you were Sean Edwards, what's keeping you awake this week about what you've seen from Ireland from really towards the end of last year's Six Nations all the way through to last weekend?
Oh, plenty keeping Sean Edwards awake. The ability, and number one, is the ability of the Irish forwards to pass the ball either to inside, outside, or behind to Sexton or Bundyaki when they're running at full pace and very close to the line. We call that game line theory. You take the ball to the game line, to the defence, and then play, which puts your skills under great pressure. Most forwards around the world do not have those skills. And the extraordinary thing about what Ireland are doing is their forwards, like the 2 Tigers, Tygburn and
Furlong.
Sorry, I got a mental block there. Furlong. And Furlong passed a couple of staggering balls on Saturday. You couldn't believe the passing that man was doing at the game line as they're being tackled. And then the other part that's keeping Sean awake is if they don't pass and just run themselves. So if Furlong just runs himself, that man is a bulldozer. So is Byrne. But then Byrne runs like that, and he put Josh van der Fleer through the gap. Furlong runs at pace. He's got people either side, and he pops this incredible pass out to Sexton. And Sexton moves the ball wide, and they come back, and that sets up Bundyaki's try. So Ireland's attack is a handful. And then when you get to the behind those players, you've got Sexton and Bundyaki and now Mac Hansen playing as second distributors. And Bundyaki, the improvement of his ball skills has just been extraordinary. Some of those passes he was delivering on Saturday, he couldn't have done those 2 years ago. There's no way he didn't do them 2 years ago. So the skill improvement in players like Byrne and Bundyaki has been extraordinary. And then the other part, as we talk about France, this team believes in the system they're playing, this Irish team. They believe in the philosophy that's been put to them by Andy Farrell. The great change, this wasn't a small change, this was a radical change from how they were playing in last year's Six Nations. You go back and look, and it's completely unrecognisable. It's new, it's vibrant, it's brilliant, and Andy Farrell and his coaching team deserve great credit, and the players deserve great credit.
You've been on this, Matt. You've been on this that we should be asking more of ourselves as a race. That the Irish people are creative, and I remember sitting here being inspired, listening to you, going, "We should be demanding more of ourselves. We're capable of doing more." And when you ask the players to do more, they will respond to it, and you can see it in all of the players. Like Peter O'Mahony said, even after, and keeps getting quoted, even after a month where he wasn't starting, that it was the most enjoyable month he'd ever spent in Ireland camp. You're not getting through to somebody at that stage of his career, keeping him on the bench and him coming out and eulogising about it unless something special is happening. And that seems to be, they're being asked and trusted to do more and more and more.
You can't deny people their character, right? So if you have to, when you come into a team to maximise the talent of any individual in your organisation, in a business, in sport, you've got to look at the personalities, what's the character of the people, and bring it out, and that multiplies things. So national teams in rugby around the world that play with the spirit of their national character, something happens in them. Now, I can't tell you why. I can't put this down on a piece of paper. If I could, I'd make a fortune, but I see it. And I've been in Ireland for almost 23 years now. And the national team has not played with the character of the Irish people. My grandparents were. I was brought up in an Irish house. I know the character of people. It's upbeat. It's positive. It's creative. There's humour. There's joy. And there's resilience. There's mental toughness. There's support. There's all these things that are part of the Irish character. But the national team never showed it because people didn't believe we had the skills. And I used to I've been banging on about this for years. I'd say that's crap. It's because you're not asking them to show their skills. You don't hire Leonardo da Vinci and say, go and paint the back fence. You hire Leonardo da Vinci to paint something, to create something magnificent. So what finally has happened, and long last has happened, we're saying to the Irish national team, get out there and show us what you can do. We're going to give you a loose structure around it. So every time Furlong takes the ball to the line, he's got a forward inside him, a forward outside him, and he's got someone out the back, be it Johnny Sexton or Gary Ringrose or Bundyaki, he's got someone out the back. And they're saying, right, take it to the line and you make a decision. You do what you think's right. Here's your options. Run yourself past left, right, or out the back. They're your four options. Choose one. Off you go, Spider. And you know what happens? He goes to the line and he's making sensational decisions. Tyke Byrne, they say, all of a sudden he looks around and goes, oh, give me a bit of that. I'll take the ball to the line and I'll have Josh Van der Fleet on one side. I'll have maybe Jack Conan on the other, probably more likely Caelan Doris, and I'll have, again, my outlet out the back. So he takes the line. What does he decide to do? He sees a hole, passes to Josh Van der Fleet, goes straight through the hole. 2 phases later, Conway scores in the corner. That is what we should have been doing for 20 years. Now, we haven't done it, so, okay, that you can't get the past. What have we got in the present? Because of the way we're playing, not because of the personnel, because of the way we're playing with the personnel, we're going to Paris and Ireland's got a real shot, a red hot shot at winning in Paris. You had to ask me that in June, I'd say, mate, you're going to come back with the tails between your legs. Because of the way they're playing, the way they changed in November and what they showed us last week, they got a red hot chance in Paris.
When you mentioned there a moment ago, Matt, about the fact that Bundyaki is passing balls that he perhaps wasn't doing a couple of years ago, that he wasn't maybe able to do a couple of years ago, is that just an attitude shift or is it really skill development that you've seen over the last couple of years?
It's skill development, and Andy Friend, who I know as a coach very well, Andy started with me at the Waratahs a long time ago. He is a coach that believes in skill development, of the development of the whole person, but of skills. He's a coach that is brought up in the running game and the creative game. And he would have been pushing all his players to develop their skills. But you can see Bundee Aki has really benefited from that, because every national team benefits from what's done below them. So it's impossible in the time frame for Andy Farrell or Mike Catt to develop skills. You just don't have time. They can maintain them and enhance them, but the development of skills is done at every team across the world at the level below. So if you're seeing Antoine Dupont, he's developed those skills at the 18s, the 20s, and at Toulouse, and he brings them to the national side. So there's no difference with that. The same with Ty Byrne developing his passing skills. What I would add to that is that these guys would go to the national camp and they'd see Henshaw throwing those balls and the other players throwing those balls and going, if I don't develop that pass and get that pass right, I'm not going to get in this squad. So the fact that there is this wonderful internal competition within the group, people like, Hugh might get popped out as Henshaw comes back. He's a quality player. Gavin Coombs can't get in the side. He's a high quality player that I really rate. So to get in this side, they're looking around saying, well, I've got to develop this passing. I've got to develop this running. I've got to know this system to be there fast and get into position fast, which is another thing this Irish team are doing brilliantly. They're getting into position in attack in lightning speed. So all of those factors come into play. But yes, the skills are developed by the provinces. And that's why, as I've said on your program, I've written in the Irish Times, I've saying on TV, a great national philosophy starts at the schools, goes to the provinces and the clubs, and then finishes at the national team. It doesn't go the other way. It doesn't start at the national team and come down. That doesn't work. We tried that for 25 years. It doesn't work. It's got to come from the ground up, as the saying goes, and that's what's happening.
So, it sounds like you're giving us a pretty good chance. What's going to happen?
Oh, wow. Sure. Red hot chance. Red hot chance. But that's not going to be easy. That French side will be much better for the run. It was torrential rain in the first half. It stopped, but it's still obviously a slippery ball, but they still compiled 45 points. And French side were very inaccurate. Now, here's the other interesting part about this. Ireland have to take this philosophy on the road for the first time. Now, they're going to Stade de France, which is a magnificent stadium. You saw they're giving out all the tricolours. The national flags of France are going to be out. There's going to be 65,000 flags flying. It is going to be raucous and it's going to be dry. I checked the weather forecast. Now, what does that mean for us as supporters? You talked about the joys of French cuisine. Here is going to be some great joys of watching one of the best games, what I think could be one of the best games of rugby we've seen in years. Two super attacking sides filled with great individuals that can turn a game, and there's a lot up for stakes. There is a Grand Slam. Someone come Saturday night is going to not be able to win a Grand Slam, and the other one is going to be on track for a Grand Slam. So there is, as we say in Australia, there's sheep stations on this. This is valuable, and it's just going to be a ding-dong battle. It's going to be two heavyweights going toe-to-toe. The outcome, I really don't know, Jim. I really don't know. But that is healthy.
Yes.
Because, as I said in June, we didn't have a chance. We're not going in here, there's always got a chance. Ireland can win this game. Ireland can definitely win this game. Will they? They're going to have to execute. They're going to have to play brilliantly, and they're going to have to defend brilliantly. And that's my worry, is what we're doing on the wings. So our defence, through the way we're tackling, the way we're working for each other, and everyone, the technique and the system from the wings in is brilliant. But we're still what we call jamming. That means the winger will look up, and if I'm the right winger and I see attack, I run infield to try and cut that attack off. And we saw James Lowe do it last year, and France burned us. Against Wales, we still did it. We saw Conway come in and they got around us, and Mac Hansen did an amazing cover tackle from the far wing. That's what I'm worried about, because France scored all their tries, pretty much, except one, right on the last 5 centimetres of terrain at Stade de France. That's where we've got a weakness.